Hello, everybody. Nicholas Snow here, coming to you with a very special episode of the Nicholas Snow Show on PromoHomo.TV. And right at the top of the show, for those of you who are in the Coachella Valley who see this in time, I want you to know about the third Wednesday program at the Mizell Center here in Palm Springs. I'm coming to you live on the, my watch is telling me I'm on the air. I'm coming to you on October 17th at 6 p.m. This event is October 19th at 5:30 p.m. That's the reception, and afterwards is this panel. But if you're watching from anywhere around the world, have no fear because half the panel is with me on the show tonight. So the official program at the Mizell Center is part of their third Wednesday speaker series. And in addition to Glenne, McElhinney, and Tim Vincent, who are on the show tonight, the series is also going to feature David Gray and Richard Burns. And these are very interesting people, one of whom I know. Well, I know one of my guests tonight, and I know one of the other panelists that will be there on Wednesday. So we have some history to talk about tonight. We're going to look about the importance of institutions and museums in preserving our past. And we're also going to look at the whole spectrum of LGBTQ plus preservation of stories, because I know some of our guests will be able to talk to the point that a lot of our history was never captured because of the inequities that exist in our culture and our society. So that's what's coming up on this really important broadcast. But first, I want you to know how you can watch, wherever you are in the world, the Palm Springs Pride Parade live on PromoHomo.TV.
I have found a place out of time and space, far from city lights, up on greater heights. And I'm flying alone now. And nothing is holding me down now. I'm flying alone now. And nothing is holding me down now. I have found a place out of time and space, far from city lights, up on greater heights.
So I'm so excited about Palm Springs Pride, and I bet after seeing that you are too. Go to palmspringspride.gay for more information. So before I bring my guest on, I just want to let you know that half of the panel is here tonight, but this coming Wednesday at the Mizell Center, October 19th, 2022, is a wonderful live panel discussion preserving and sharing our collective LGBTQ voices. And at the event, the panelists will be Richard Burns, who's chair of the board of directors of the American LGBTQ plus Museum in New York, David Gray, who's the co-founder of the LGBTQ plus History and Archives of the Desert, and then my guest tonight, Glenne McElhinney, who is the program director of Impact Stories, and Tim Vincent, who's the president and co-founder of Brothers of the Desert. And the panel will be moderated by my friend and probably yours, Brad Furr, who's the CEO and publisher of KGay 1065 Palm Springs and Gay Desert Guide. It's sure to be an engaging and educational conversation. Reservations are required, and there's a suggested donation of $10 to make your reservation. Visit mizell.org. I have it on the screen for you. and the reception, which is included in the ticket price, is at 5:30. And I'm sort of taking the night off. I'm going to go there to this panel in person. But when I'm there, a historic broadcast will still be airing in my time slot right here on PromoHomo.TV. I'll be taking you back to the 2016 official ribbon cutting and building dedication for the LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert. And if that date is ringing a bell, literally this happened 6 days after President Trump was elected. The former President Trump was elected. So 6 days after this is when our community got together to celebrate the LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert. Thursday night, I have Palm Springs City Council member Ron DeHart on my show. I'm endorsing him. He's not a member yet. He's a candidate. I'm endorsing him, and I've invited his competitor, Joy Meredith, on the show, so she might be coming up at a later date. And then Friday, I will be live on the arrivals carpet at Center Stage, which is the big gala for the LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert. So it's a busy week, but getting back to my guest. So, Glenne McElhinney is the founder of Impact Stories, a California community-based history project that uses oral histories and documentaries and exhibits to make LGBT and ally history come alive for film viewers, classrooms, teen programs, and all types of audiences. In 1982, representing the San Francisco Lesbian and Gay Freedom Day Parade, she became a founding member of Interpride, the International Association of Pride Celebrations. Her current project, Tales of California, is producing short-form documentaries about the original 1978 rainbow flags and the loss of a beloved LGBT community center that was torn down for a parking lot. Tim Vincent has been working in the field of HIV and other health-related issues for nearly 30 years. He managed a national capacity building assistance program funded by the Centers for Disease Control to provide training, technical assistance, and resources to healthcare professionals working in HIV prevention and care, and continues to provide these services on a consultant basis for the University of California at San Francisco. He's worked for the past 15 years as an independent consultant to strengthen healthcare programs to promote health equity, especially as it relates to LGBTQ+ and communities of color. And he's the president of the board of directors for Brothers of the Desert, which is a volunteer-led nonprofit organization with a mission to empower Black gay men and allies through education, socialization, advocacy, volunteerism, and mentorship in the Coachella Valley. So they've done a lot, and we're going to learn more about them in just a minute.
I have found a place out of time and space, far from time and space, far from city lights, up on greater heights.
You know, it never occurred to me until just now that since I broadcast from my bedroom, I am, in a sense, inviting my guest into my bedroom. So let me do that right now. Welcome, Glenne McElhinney and Tim Vincent. Hello.
Nice to be in your bedroom.
Well, you know what? I wish someone would say that to me more often. But anyway, it's nice
And a
to have
man.
you here. Yes, exactly. Nice to have you here, and welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So I've known Tim for a while, so I'm going to defer to you first, Glenne, to kick us off. first of all, describe kind of what year it was and where you were when you came out.
Well, I fell in love with a woman, and then I came out to my parents first and to my family, and it was a rough road. It was the 70s, and they didn't appreciate it at the time and told me I was choosing a not good road and weren't supportive, sadly.
What year in the 70s?
75, 74, 75. Yeah.
Okay, I don't. This isn't about ageism or anything, but were you in high school? Were you in junior highs?
College.
So you were in college in the mid 70s,
Yeah.
and you came out as a young adult. And where had you grown up?
On the peninsula near San Francisco. I'm from Oakland, San Francisco area. Yeah. So I'm local to
So
Northern
you were,
California.
so you were sort of coming out like just before San Francisco exploded, or had it already exploded as a gay mecca?
It had exploded after World War II, actually. San Francisco was
Oh,
always a mecca, as LA was also. Both LA and San Francisco were huge meccas long before people knew about being gay. Long Beach was a huge mecca also early in the early days. It just
okay
wasn't that
then.
well covered.
And you know what? Every moment of every day, all of us can learn more about LGBTQ plus history, as evidenced just now in this moment for me. So, Tim, when and where did you come out?
Ooh. In some ways it's a difficult question because I think I knew in my, soul that I was gay. And then it was a gradual thing. It wasn't a moment of like, okay, now I'm out. It was really about um, being able to be honest with a couple of people. But the thing that was really my coming out story, I guess, would be that for my family, I know that was a hard thing for them. They didn't seem like they would be supportive of it just because of a lot of beliefs people had. But I really made a pact with myself that if my mother ever asked me if I was gay, I couldn't lie. I'd have to say yes. So that was my thing. I wasn't going to come out, but I was going
Yeah.
to. So that was my rationalization. And there was a time when I was living in LA and we were sitting down and she kind of gave me that look of like, I said, you know what? And I just knew it. I said, are you asking me if I'm gay? And she said, yes. And I said, well, then the answer is yes.
Mm, mm.
However, the other little part about it is my brother's also gay. He was a little bit older than me. And she could figure it out that if I was gay, then that meant he was gay. So we did a little double coming out. And she had
Wow.
a whole like, oh my God, I have two gay sons. I can't. It was
Oh.
dramatic. And I had to call my brother and say, before you go home, I
Ah!
accidentally did you. So it was a little bit, we still talk, my brother and I, but it wasn't easy. It's a process. I mean, for a lot of families, but for our family, they're wonderful. Now my mother's not alive, but my siblings and everybody are great at this point. But that's a process. I mean, it really is a process.
You know, one of the things when I came out to my family in the early 80s, I thought that I was telling them something terrible about myself. And it's so
Hmm.
great because in today's age, you could see a mother jumping for joy when she learns she has two gay sons. I mean, that might be the most fabulous thing to happen in her city that week. So it's just all about the passage of time and space. Yet today, people could still have the same challenges, and they could also be thrown out on
Yeah.
the street by their parents. So, still more work to be done.
For sure.
So, Glenn, when did you have what you would say was your first activist moment?
Well, I became an activist when I was still in elementary school against the Vietnam War. And I used to cut school in fifth, sixth, seventh grade. And I would only cut school to go to demonstrations that were near my house because I just hated the Vietnam War. And I got called into the principal's office several times, and they ended up calling my mom. She had to come in. And what my mom did, because she knew how anti-war I was and why I was going to the demonstrations, every night we were seeing what was happening on the news at that time, she started giving me passes and would give me a slip. So I
Mm,
wouldn't cut. I,
mm,
I would get permission And then by the time I was in junior high school, she was driving me to the demos with my friends. And I'm very thankful because that was, I participated in all these wonderful anti-war demonstrations, including the moratoriums in 1970 and all these really important ones that had gay people in them too, by the way. And so when I came out, it just seemed natural. It was within a few weeks, I was already doing parades, and I just felt so happy to be gay and, you know, be an activist.
One of the things I find most surprising is that the same mother who drove you as a fifth grader to a Vietnam War protest was the same mother that had a hard time when you came out as a lesbian. You
Kind
would
of
think,
sad.
right, you would think that someone that would have done the former would have been better with the latter, but once again, that's projection. That if someone has one value, they're going to have a similar value in a different area. Tim, what was your first sort of activist moment?
These are such great questions. You're making me think of things. I remember going out with my mother because Bobby Kennedy was running for president, and they did a little train stop thing. And I remember just being so riveted, and for some reason feeling like what he was saying was really important and something that would matter to my life. I remember just being
Yeah.
really young and feeling that way and feeling like that's it. And then everything, everything else happened. But and then another moment that I'm thinking about is with HIV and AIDS. I mean, I really feel like there was a moment where, because of a lot of us have gone through such grief and loss and difficulty with that through my own fear and anxiety and loss and all
Mhm.
that, it galvanized me to feel like I had to jump in and do something. So that
Wow.
changed my trajectory. I was doing something completely different in terms of career wise, and I completely have been doing. I mean, you just were reading that very long thing that you read about me, but it was, I've been doing this for over 30 years because it doesn't end. It's like another thing. I think like the talk we were starting to talk about homophobia or transphobia or it doesn't go away. And racism, I mean, there's so many things that create the difficulties that I think people are having still with HIV. But still, anyway, that was what started it, and it's been what I've been doing.
Well, neither of you should feel embarrassed that I read your bios and all of the bio material that I had because you two deserve to be celebrated because you are making history and you're preserving history. And we all have our stories. So, Glenn, tell me what drove you into the process of really wanting to preserve our histories and the ways in which you have done that.
Well, mine was very specific. It was an actual aha moment, and it was seeing a film that some viewers might be familiar with called Paragraph 175. Nicholas, are you familiar with that film? Jeff?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Tim? Yeah. About the gay men and lesbians who were persecuted by the Nazis during World War II and who were rounded up and put in the camps. And one of the things that the narrator was saying in the film in paragraph 175 is that he had traveled all over Europe trying to find people to tell the stories about who had been persecuted by the Nazis and that they were dying and that they were dying very quickly and that he could only find 12 or 15 in total of the hundreds of thousands. Because he said there were, that they had figured, because the Nazis kept, records, over 100,000 had been persecuted and he could only find a few. So it made me think that the same thing was happening, not the persecution, but California queer people, LGBT people in California were also dying. And that really gave me an aha moment. And I wanted to do what he was doing, but preserving California history.
Beautiful.
Got me
That's
started.
okay then. One of the things I said as I was introducing the show is that at least one of my guests would have a particular perspective about how there's really important pieces of our history that haven't been captured or haven't been told because of other dynamics, such as racism. And Glenn, I will come back to you to sort of address the same topic. What stories do you feel are not being told? But Tim, to you, like, for example, I don't know how well you know your history, but one of the architects of the civil rights movement was one of Martin Luther King Jr.'s inner circle is gay. Tell
Bayard,
us about.
well, Bayard Rustin
Wow.
is an
Yeah.
figure,
Bayard.
is an important figure, and one of his, kind of right hand people that helped to organize the March on Washington, and is a queer, a gay man, and um, I think that was used against the civil rights movement because they knew that they had that thing on him, and I think it really, unfortunately, made him go somewhat underground for a while. Um, and he was still doing it from the sidelines, but I think to me, I mean, there's a lot more to that history, but to me, that's the intersection of like a civil rights movement and a LGBTQ rights issue, and how when people are um, when they're fearful of what we might be able to do, the power that we have as collective, I think they try to drive wedges against each other and do things that make it difficult for us to have a collective power. And I think that was an example of that, because I think it really did make it so that he couldn't say, I mean, Martin Luther couldn't be like, oh, I'm supporting this queer man. I mean, I think he probably did on his own level, but I think it was really difficult for that to be public. And I think that's an important piece of history. There's a great documentary about him too that's out that we showed as one of our Brothers of the Desert events. So.
Well, that's fantastic. Glenn, what about you? What are some of the stories you are aware of that haven't been given their justice or that have been preserved to your relief?
Well, actually, I do feel that the film festivals are good now. The various queer film festivals across California that I get to go to are preserving and showing more films of people of color. I remember 20, 30 years ago, there was a total dearth of films, and it was noticeable because people sitting in the audience, in San Francisco, Oakland area, a lot of different nationalities, cultures, colors, and yet it wasn't reflected on the screen. So thank goodness there's been some improvements. There's been funding of LGBT filmmakers and people of color and getting those films to the forefront. So I think that's helped a lot, and more needs to get done. Um, there were a lot of out queer people. I just do feel that were people of color. I don't feel that they're covered as well as should be in our history. So that's an area I do feel is lacking. Agreed.
I would agree with you on that. And there's a couple of things I know you're going to, it's okay to jump in?
Yeah.
Jump in.
There's a couple of things that we're wanting to continue to do in our organization, because we are really a Black focused organization. And one of the things two things we're doing. One of the things is we do this wellness summit. And one of the things that we're doing this year is somebody's going to be coming to speak about Black LGBTQ history and how that is connected to our overall sense of well-being as a group, And so he's doing that, and then we do this thing on New Year's Eve, a fundraiser thing, and it's a legacy ball this time. And again, we're honoring different people like Bayard Rustin, but other people. James Baldwin. There's a number of people that we have, and the tables will be named after them. There'll be pictures of the people all over the place, because it matters so much that we continue to honor the people that even allowed, me to be speaking to you with the comfort that I have.
Well, I've put brothersofthedesert.org up on the screen throughout the entire time you were talking about that. And while we're on the topic, why don't you give just a little bit more information about the upcoming Wellness Summit? I know a week from tonight, we're doing a completely different episode all about it. But why don't you tell people a little bit about the Wellness Summit and how to participate?
Okay, great. So we do an annual Wellness Summit the second Saturday every year. This is the 4th year that we've been doing it. Really just
the second Saturday of November.
So it's November 12th. And it will be at Margaritaville from 9 to about 4:30. We have a variety of speakers. It's done almost like in a conference format where you can choose different breakouts. And one of the things we have members, so we're a membership organization, and we asked the members who were mostly identified as African American Black gay men, what would it mean to live your best Black gay life? And they said stuff like, I want to have a good relationship. I want to have a connection to spirituality. I want to know my history better. I want to talk about race and racism. So we found speakers to connect to all of those things and be able to offer those presentations. And so it's going to be another great event. We've been doing this again, like I said, for 4 years. We just take donations, whatever people want to give us, we take. But it's an incredible lineup of people. And if you will go to that our website, it's really the front page. It tells you who's there. And we also have, I'm from the Bay Area as well, and we have
Cool.
Bishop Yvette Flunder is going to be there doing her thing. I don't know if you know her, but she's pretty amazing in the Black LGBTQ spiritual community. So she's going to be doing something there too. So it's great. And please.
Well, I definitely look forward to being there myself. I've already registered. I don't know if you saw my name come
I
through,
saw
but
it. I saw it. Thank you for
I signed up. And Glenn, I'm going to throw your website up because I'd love for you to talk about things that you might be up to and that you want my viewers to know about.
Well, yeah, thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, I'm still doing oral histories. I had to take a break, obviously, during COVID. COVID's been hard on all of us. I'm assuming you, Tim. It's been tough to do things. You know, I love that we're still doing things in your bedroom, Nicholas. That's great.
At
But
least I'm
those
doing
of us that
something in my bedroom.
some of us that do things in person, it's a little bit harder for the last few years. But looking forward to when everybody gets their boosters and things are quieted down a little bit with COVID, be able to go back to work. And I do have funding to finish some films that I started working on. One is about the origins of the rainbow flag, the original rainbow flag that was built in the Gay Community Center in San Francisco in 1978. And the group of artists that put the flag together physically made the flags. There were two of them. And I'm also doing a documentary, I hope, I'm got to work on funding, about somebody from Southern California that people down here might remember or know of, which is Dr. Evelyn Hooker. And both of us in our introductions that you did, Nicholas, in our bios, both of them mentioned allies. And one of the things that I've done as an historian is try to recognize our allies also that helped us over the years, because there were a lot of really great allies that did come to the forefront for us and help us in our journey that we've had so far. Dr. Evelyn Hooker was a psychologist at UCLA, and she was one of the first to do a study about healthy gay men in Los Angeles, funded partially through UCLA. And it was one of the first studies that were ever done that didn't involve people in mental institutions or prisons. And it was studying healthy gay men in the Los Angeles area. And that's Dr. Evelyn Hooker. I'm looking forward to doing a little mini documentary about her geared to California classrooms and what an important ally she was for us.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the kind of things I do. I also did exhibits around Dancers We Lost, which was dancers here on the West Coast that we lost to HIV/AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
And we did banners that were up in West Hollywood and Long Beach and some other towns, both in Southern California and Northern California, especially geared to young people to understand the losses that we had during HIV/AIDS and how terrible they were. And we used the photographs that the dancers had these were professional dancers, and these were their favorite photos that they had of dancers. And those were what we highlighted, them dancing in their costumes. Very beautiful photographs, things like that, to try to bring HIV/AIDS home of the losses.
I love that you did that. Did you have Ed Mock in there?
Yes.
Of course you did.
With a wonderful, wonderful skirt that he wore at this incredible performance in San Francisco. What a dancer. And so popular in the community.
I know. He was
huge
amazing.
Loss. Yeah.
He was amazing. Yeah, that sounds great.
But we both love our allies too. Both of us.
Yeah, we do. We do. I don't know if you met me, but we do. And that's part of our mission. It's really about empowering Black gay men and allies.
Yeah.
All of our stuff. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that everything that we do is open to everybody. So everybody is welcome to come to every event that we do, and it's been great because you've been there, Nicholas. So it's a really nice group of people and a nice mix of people and a nice diverse mix of people, which I think is a wonderful thing to have here in the Coachella Valley.
Well, we could go on and on, but we're not going to. However, we're going to go a little bit over 30 minutes because we're 3 seconds past that now. I just want to review for those that, just a second. I've just opened up the wrong one. I'm going to put up the flyer for for Wednesday's show. Just 1 second. Wednesday's panel discussion. Putting up the flyer, and that's probably too small for people to see on the screen unless you snap a screenshot of it. But so Wednesday, October 19th, 2022, the reception is at 5:30. The program is at 6. Go to mizell.org to reserve your ticket. But as you already know, because you've watched the whole show, you've had some really valuable experiences here right now. So grateful that I got the opportunity to talk to each of you. So one of the things I want you to do is I want you to ask each other a question. So Glenne, you must have questions of Tim, learning stuff about him. What would you like to ask him as your question?
Well, how about as also a Northern Californian, what brought you down to the desert? And I'm assuming similar to me of knowing it's a gay mecca. For me, there were so many people from the Castro that live down here now.
Yeah. A lot of it was about wanting to be in a place that felt very comfortable and affirming as a person who was gay and affordable at the time. So those were some of the things. But I think just to say, we actually organized this particular group, Brothers of the Desert, after we moved here, recognizing that something needed to change, we felt, with regard to the representation of people of color and the representation of African-American gay men in this area. So that's what got us to do it. And it's been a really great experience. But my initial thing was really about, comfort and finding a place to be as an older person.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And Tim, what would you like to ask Glenne?
I want to do something totally different. Yeah, is that okay? I want to know.
Oh yeah. Go for it.
About okay, so it's a Saturday night. Where would we find you?
Oh my gosh. Trying to find lesbians.
Yeah.
It's lesbian potlucks, it's lesbian, gatherings, trying to find lesbians. I remember coming here when I was younger and there were lesbian bars, quite a few.
I know, they're gone.
Lesbian bars are gone. We have to go a certain night. So Saturday night, I'd be out looking for where the lesbians are.
Oh, that's great.
I know there's a lot of us here in the desert. We just have to find each other.
All right, so I take it, Glenne, that you know about the L Fund.
Yes. Oh, I go to L Fund events. I go to Lesbian Expo events. Yeah, I like following Jennifer Corday. She's smart and she's a good musician.
Well, she's one of the main performers Friday at this Center Stage Gala.
Excellent.
But by the way, when I meet lesbians, I make sure they know about the L Fund, and when I meet gay black men, I make sure they know about Brothers of the Desert. I really come right out and say, "Do you know about these groups?" Okay, so I would like to conclude our interview by sharing something I've learned, but then I want to ask you a serious question, and I'm not going to ask you first because I want the response to be spontaneous. So one of the things I've learned as an ally of black and brown people is I have a whole different understanding of white privilege. And the fact that really the best thing that I can do is help identify and deconstruct it so it no longer exists. And I don't think it's just a matter of building up equality for people that don't have it. But I also think that I don't know quite how to deconstruct white privilege, but I'm aware that it needs to be deconstructed. And when I was coming out, we would talk about the civil rights movement. And I always lumped all these movements together. And when I was in a pride parade, we were all together. But the huge insight that I had was decades ago when I stepped out of that pride parade, I was still a cis white male. And I
Yep.
had a completely different life and experience of anyone who wasn't. So that's just kind of where I am along my own journey. But before I ask you your final question, do either one of you have any remarks about what I just shared?
You know what? I guess I would say that one of the things, I think it's a process. Like it's a lifelong learning process that, I'm on. I'm hoping that people will be on that as well. And I think that there is also the notion of intersectionality, which really is about the fact that we're many things and parts of our identities are privileged and we have power in them and parts of them we don't. And sometimes it's hard to see that. And I think I can say, okay, so I'm a gay black man, but I'm a man. And so gender gives me so much power in this world. And sometimes I'm not always aware of it. Or I'd like to be more aware of how to use that in a way that's, helping to lift others who aren't having that privilege up. But I think that we all have it. I mean, we all have both things, and I think it's important to recognize that. I think.
Well, good point. Good point. And Glenn, anything to add about that?
No, just very well aware of white privilege and how different it is, and the long-term effects of things like redlining in the Black community, freeway building, urban renewal. Watching that happen in the 60s and watching Black neighborhoods just be leveled, Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. It was very well known that that was going on at the time, but now we're really living with it generation after generation, very overtly.
Right, and the effects of that, and what that looks like, whether it's health
Especially in wealth, how
or
wealth is passed down by white folks and it's not passed down because they can't, because
right.
housing.
Yeah, and I know we're going over, but I think that makes it also sometimes difficult for people because they're not stepping back to notice the sort of roots of all of that. That they start to blame people or wonder why people don't have something, or that will look in their neighborhood and thinking, I can't believe there's no brown people in my neighborhood. I'm thinking because they didn't allow brown people in the neighborhood. So I mean, there's just so much history there that when you say, yeah, it's a good word. Nicholas, about deconstructing. It's almost like you have to deconstruct that to even get a sense of what we're really seeing. And I think that happens. I'm in Palm Springs, and I think if that happens, that happened here, and I think sometimes it's hard for people to really want to face that inequity continues to exist.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that we've had a very serious conversation, but fun and engaging as well. I want to point out, Tim, that the person that came out to his mom in that moment and outed his brother was also recently married and written about in the New York Times.
What?
Congratulations.
The New York Times wrote about you and your husband and your love story. So how's that for a story arc?
Ooh.
It is an amazing story arc, and actually, I do think about that. I was very moved. I mean, this happened in April, but I was thinking about my family. Again, my mother has been passed for for about 15 years or more. But I was thinking about people who came before, and just the idea that we could do that, and that we're in Palm Springs, and that we're celebrated, and that my family who had some issues were all there, all applauding. Everybody. He has an incredible family. Michael Taylor is my husband. He has an incredible family. They were supportive in there, and to think of where we've come, it's just really an amazing thing, and I feel so grateful for that. And then still knowing that more work needs to be done, and not everybody has that same trajectory, and I think we're here. All three of us are here to support that and to bring the light to that, so that people can have more, grace and more understanding and more empathy for our community.
So here's the serious question I was alluding to. So what really what's motivated me in my life was making a difference, making sure that
Yeah.
the world was a better place. And part of that, well, most of that is directed at what I learned in the early 80s when people were dying of AIDS. And I realized the most powerful thing that I personally had was my own voice and my ability to yield it. And I just never, ever stopped. And I keep finding new and different ways to do that. But my question is, what motivates you and what do you most want to be remembered for? And I'm going to go with Glenne first.
Wow, that is a good one, Nicholas. Definitely for saving our history and working hard to get it into California classrooms. And as you know, that's really threatened right now, not necessarily in California, but across the country. They are trying to take us down and keep us from teaching LGBT history in the classroom and higher education too. So preserving and then sharing our history. So that's what I hope. Although it sure was fun doing all the other things I got to do over the years
With
Um,
lesbians.
with lesbians and going to the music festivals and being dykes on bikes at the front of the parade and being on the parade committee and helping with Enterpride for a number of years. So it's that those have all been fun and great, but preserving our history and sharing it with others, I think that's really important. Thanks,
And
Nicholas.
oh, you're welcome. And Tim?
Wow, again, that's a tough one, but I'm just going to go with off the top. I think I want to be remembered for being a person who showed up, who came with an open mind as much as I could and an open heart to really empower people and move people forward, especially people who have difficult times um, in their lives for a variety of reasons. I just feel like a lot of my work has been about health equity, and I just feel like that's a huge thing in terms of
Yeah.
who is healthy and who isn't healthy, and it's so many dynamics there. And I feel like that work still motivates me because I just feel like there's so much more to be done, and I can get excited about it, and I can continue to do that. And so I guess that's what motivates me too, just the social justice element and the equity element that I think is so inherent in our culture right now that needs to be addressed.
Well, that's fantastic. I just love it. So, since this is LGBTQ History Month, um,
Yay.
so I produced a public access show for 7 years in the West Hollywood area, actually on multiple LA cable systems, available to up to 600,000 households on a regular basis.
Wow.
Wow.
And I'm not going to air a clip, but I have been preserving 3/4 inch videotapes. I have like 200 of them.
Oh,
And
excellent.
I recently digitized 14 of them, and I recently got the files transferred to me and I downloaded them. But I just want to name off these 14 episodes of my show that I chose from like a lot. So I actually, in one of my early shows, Tim, you'll be interested to know that in the '90s I featured the Black Gay and Lesbian Leadership Forum co-chairs Valerie Wagner and Gregory May.
Oh,
I have an episode about the 1996 APLA summer party at Universal Studios. I have one of two interviews that I did with Robin Tyler, who's a friend to this day. I have I digitized the second half of my coverage of the 1995 LA Pride Parade. I digitized my very first episode that was filmed on April 28th, 1993, where I featured Nancy Perez from GLAAD. I have an episode that featured Michelangelo Signorelli, who's still an amazing media personality in our community today.
yeah.
Good friends, Matt Scalarud and Fabrice Tessendo, who founded GayWired.com and are still in queer media today. I have the second half of an episode called Out Power in Hollywood that was related to a cover story that Out Magazine did and a related party. part one got destroyed in a fire. That's another story.
Ooh,
I
sad.
I attended the 1997 GLAAD Awards, and I think I have footage of that. I haven't watched this yet. I did an episode of my show around the 25th anniversary of Stonewall, where I did that show in drag, and all three of my guests on that show had a personal connection to New York City on that day. I have an interview with Quentin Crisp.
Wow.
Ooh,
And
cool.
I have an interview of an episode taped in the 90s at the Playboy Mansion called Lions, Tigers, and Hares. It was to benefit APLA. And
Wow.
I just happened to watch a little bit of that at lunch. And Drew Carey was telling me he watched my show, and that was in the 1990s. So
Treasures all.
So yeah, Nicholas, that's fantastic, and it makes me think of I think some of the reason why I was even being asked to be part of this group was really about the fact that we are creating history here in the Coachella Valley, and how important it is to document that history, to take all of the stuff that we've been doing, the events, the things, and you've been helpful with that with us along the way. But it makes me think about how important that is because, it will be 2040 before we before we blink, and it'll be like another 10 years, and it's like, what did these guys do, and what were they doing, and why were they doing it, and who was there. I think it's such an important thing for our collective LGBTQ history.
well, I look forward to seeing both of you on Wednesday in real person, in real person, what am I trying to say? In person, for real, instead of virtually. Isn't that a trip these days? I look forward to
Yeah.
that. And I just want to thank you both for being on the show tonight.
Thanks for including us.
Good to
Thank
see
you. You can hang out and talk to me in a minute if you want to, but if you have to run, I understand. And until next time, everybody, good night.